Hi everyone, it's Lindy on here from Pink Whisper Designs. Today I have a really fun Christmas pop-up card to show you with a brand new stamp set. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at this brand new set. This is done in conjunction with Art Impressions and Simon Says Stamps. This is the exclusive Christmas Train stamp set. And it's got all these adorable little images, plus the train and the coordinating dies as well. So you can see you get these little gift packages, you get the little elves, there's a Santa there, little candy canes, and you also get that little sign for the North Pole, and then this adorable little train. So for paper, I'm going to be using the Strathmore Bristol Smooth 100-pound cardstock. I've gone ahead and placed that in my Misty stamp positioner, and I'm inking that up with the VersaFine Onyx black ink. This is a permanent black ink. So I'm going to go ahead and press that out. I'm just using a regular chalk eraser to press that out. And I've grabbed the smallest acrylic block to stamp some extra presents and a few candy canes. So once I have all that stamping done, I'm going to start with my deep red. I'm using the Zig Clean Color Real Brush pens to do my coloring. These are water-based pens. And to do my blending, I'm going to be using the Blender pen from the Zig collection as well. Now I will list all the colors that I'm using today down below, and I've also got them listed up at the top as we go along. Here I'm just going to use one color, and I like to add that to kind of the edges and then pull in towards the center. So with this dark red, you don't need much, just a small touch of it, and then you just want to pull that in. And you can see here I'm getting a little too much ink on the blender, so I'm just scribbling that onto some scrap paper until it goes clear. So if you get too much ink, you can remove it as well, which is what I really love about these markers, is how forgiving they are and how easy they blend. So I like to just add my shadows here and there, and then again I'm just going to pull down towards the center here. Now I'm just using the one color, but you could certainly use more than one color here for your shadowing. You could use 2 or 3 colors here, but if you add enough to the edges and then just kind of pull in, you'll get that highlighting and that shadowing, and you can always come in with a little bit more of that same color. So now I'm just doing the little berries on that train. Now you want to make sure you clean off that blender pen before you go to your next color. And here I'm using the turquoise green. And although I do have all those marker colors listed above as we go along, I will have them all listed below and also on my blog, so that if you need to reference those, you can find all of those colors. Now on camera, I'm only going to be showing you how I colored in the train, and all the little items I colored in off camera. I didn't want to take up too much time in the video because I still do want to show you how I did the pop-up and give you all the dimensions of that. So I just am going to show you how I colored in this little train. So basically, when I do color in all those other little images, I will just be repeating the colors that I used in the train primarily. I don't like to add too many more colors. Once I've picked my color palette, I like to stick to that, and I don't like to introduce too many more colors. So basically, you'll see the colors here, and then those are the colors that I'll repeat on my other little images. And now with the dark gray, I'm going to add some shadows down at the bottom of the train here. Now what's so cute about these little images, this is like the cubby sets that Art Impressions has. And when we die cut this, all of those little windows are going to get cut out. So we can place all of our little items inside the windows. We can place the little elves in there, or the little presents in there, or the candy canes, whatever you want to do here. So it is really fun to play with. And then we do have the coordinating dies for all the other little pieces. So we can stack up some presents on the top of the train, and I'm going to place some of the elves up there as well. Now I'm switching over to the yellow just to do this little piece on the top of the train here. And then I thought that I wasn't getting enough shadowing, so I did introduce one more color on this one, and that's the bright yellow. So here I'm using 2 colors to do my blending. That was just to give it a little bit more of a shadow here. And I'm just going to add those colors just around the window trim here on the train, and then up at the top as well. And I did miss that one little section at the very top of the train there, which I did off camera. But I used the yellow there as well, and you'll see that here in a minute. Now, going to the black, I'm going to do the wheels. So I'm going to do this wheel, and I'm just putting black on 2 sides of the wheel, and then I'm just bringing it around. And here I'm just removing a little bit of the black just to give it a little bit more of a highlight. Now we will be using a white gel pen to add some highlights here later on, so don't worry too much if your highlighting isn't perfect. We can kind of fix that using our white gel pen. And that'll just make everything pop a little bit more too. Now with light green and deep green, I'm going to color in the little holly leaves here. I'm starting with that light green, adding a little bit of the darker green, and then blending that in. Then going back to the yellow and the bright yellow, I'm just doing the centers of those wheels. So here's where I'm coming in with my Uniball Signo white gel pen, and I'm just going to add some highlights. And again, this is just going to make everything pop out and give us some little added dimension here. It definitely makes things look a little bit more 3-dimensional. Now, if your white gel pen isn't working really well, mine was getting a little bit dry here, you can scribble it onto some scrap paper and just get it flowing again. I did end up switching pens here though, because this one was a little bit dry. So I'm adding little highlights to the tops of the hats on the elves and on the presents, and then on the bodies on the elves as well, and on my little Santa. So now I'm going to go ahead and grab that coordinating die for the train and all of the coordinating dies, and you can see there that it's going to cut out all those little windows for us. So you want to take a little time to line that up really well, and then I like to put a piece of scrap paper over this as I run it through. After I've done all my coloring, I just don't want anything to get smudged or dirty, so I like to add that as just an extra step there. So now you can see we can place all these little images wherever we want. We can have them popping out through the little windows, sitting up on top. So now I've got some Bristol Smooth cardstock. It measures 5.5 by 8.5, and I'm going to score this at 4 1/4. So this is a standard A2 size card, and this is a 100-pound weight cardstock. And then I want to cut a panel for the inside, and I've gone ahead and done that, and you can see it's just slightly smaller than our card. So that measures 5 1/4 by 8 1/4. So I've just trimmed off 1/4 inch all the way around, and then we can score that at 4 1/8. So that's halfway. So now I can fold this in half, and you just want to press that crease out really well here, and that'll sit right inside our card. So this inside panel is where we're going to create our pop-up mechanism. So what I want to do now is I'm using my T ruler, and I've placed this on my silicone mat just so it won't slide around too much while I do some measurements here. And this is really quick and easy measurements here. So I want to go up 1/2 inch. So I'm just using the grid line on my silicone mat, and I'm marking that at 1/2 inch up from the score line. And then I want to come in from the sides 1 inch. So 1 inch from the left and 1 inch from the right. And I'm just marking that with a pencil. Just a little dot there. So I can erase those 2 marks on the side there. So I've gone up 1/2 inch, in 1 inch, and the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to fold this back on itself now. I'm going to fold it the opposite way, and then I'm cutting up to that little dot that we made, so that I'm cutting up 1/2 inch. And you can see that I did that on both sides. So now we need some score lines just to make this easier to fold. So at that 1/2 inch mark, and I'm starting at the cut line and going to the other cut line, and I'm going to flip it over and do the same thing. And that's just because it's so thick. I want to make sure that I get a nice score on both sides here. If you're using a thinner paper, you may not have to do both sides. So now you can see that I've got a score line on the back and on the front. I'm going to go ahead and fold that one way, then I'll flip it over and fold it the other way. Just make sure your card doesn't move around while you're doing that. You just want to press out that fold. Okay, so now that I have that, we're going to open that, just double checking that it goes back and forth. I'm going to open this up, and now you can see we have that little mechanism there. So what I'm going to do is just let that pop forward. So I'll do that again there, just so that's going to pop forward, and that'll create our little pop-up. So now again, I want to press this out, just making sure that everything is pressed out nicely so that this mechanism will work really easily. And now you can see we have the pop-up, and that's going to hold our little train. So it's really simple to create these pop-up mechanisms. You can create them as wide or as narrow as you need them to be, or even as deep as you want it to be coming out on the card. You can cut in further than 1/2 inch if you want it to pop out in the card a little bit further. So keep that in mind as well. So now I'm covering that little mechanism. So I've placed some purple tape along the fold line, and now I'm placing it over that pop-up mechanism as well, because I want that lower section to look like snow. So we're keeping that white. Now with the Peacock Feathers Distress Oxide ink, we're going to create the sky. So I'm using my foam applicator tool, and I'm just going to blend up. So I'm blending up from that score line up towards the top of the card panel here. And that again will be the sky area. And anything down at the bottom that's white will be the snow. Now I'm covering the bottom of the panel here with some scrap paper. I'm spritzing this with my Distress sprayer, which just has water in it, and I'm blotting that up with a paper towel. And then I'll heat set that very quickly with my heat tool. And that's going to give us some nice little splotches here. And then with my white gesso, we'll create a little bit more of that snowy look. So I'm placing a little bit down on my glass media mat. I'm using a small paintbrush here. I'm adding a little bit of water to that gesso, and I'm going to mix that together, and then I'll spatter this panel. And again, I'm using that smaller paintbrush just to get some tiny little spatters, so we can add a lot of texture to this card by adding a lot of the snowy background. So again, I'll quickly heat set that, and then I can go ahead and peel up that purple tape. And now we have our beautiful sky. I have a little smudge there, but I'm going to use my mono sand eraser off camera, and I'll get rid of that really quickly. So now with my rectangle A2 double stitch dies, I'm taking that second largest one, and those are from Art Impressions, and I've die cut 2 of these, again out of the Strathmore Bristol Smooth 100-pound cardstock. Now I'm going to create that same sky that I did on the inside panel on this panel as well. So I'm just going to recreate that exact same sky for the front of the card. So I went ahead and did that off camera. Now with my Lawn Fawn stitched hillside borders, I'm taking that second panel that we cut. These two are the exact same size. And I'm going to go ahead and create the snowy border for the front of our card. So I will keep the front of the card fairly simple because we have this beautiful pop-up for the inside of the card. So I'm creating 2 of the snowy borders, and they both have stitching all the way around. And I'm just trying to decide which way I'll want those to be. And now we need to create a snowy border for the inside of the card. So this is a little bit trickier because we have that little pop out, but it's very easy to do. So I've cut a piece of cardstock the same width as my card. So that would be 5.5 and just about 2 inches tall, but that's just an approximate height here. So I'm marking again that 1/2 inch up from the bottom and then 1 inch from the sides, just like we did for the pop-up mechanism. This is going to fit around our pop-up mechanism. So I want to do the same cut. So I'm up 1/2 inch, in 1 inch from each side, and I'm going to draw a pencil line here so that you can see what I'm doing. So I'm just going to mark that with the pencil, and now you can see that we're going to cut that right out. I'm using my Fiskars cutter to do this, but you could certainly just use your scissors here. So now that will sit right over that mechanism, and that will continue the snow right up to that top panel. So now I want to add that snowy border just like we did for those front pieces, and I'm going to just place this down and run that through the die cutting machine. So now we have that cute little snowy border for the inside of the card as well. You can see that there. So now I'll take all 3 of those little snowy borders, and I'm going to use my Tombow glass Distress Oxide ink, and I'm going to use one of my smaller brushes from my Picket Fence Studio Life Changing Brushes, and I'll just go right across the tops of these. And I'm just going to add a little bit of that shadow right across the top of these snowy borders. And I'll do that for all 3 of these. So let's set those aside. So now I want to create my little train tracks. So I'm going to use my block letter die set, and I'm going to grab the letter I. And I'm using my 100-pound craft cardstock, and I'm going to die cut a whole bunch of these. This is going to be to create the little sections on the train track. Now you could certainly just cut some little rectangles. And here I'm using the Walnut Stain Distress Oxide ink just to go around the edges of these. I looked through my stash. This little letter I was the perfect size to create my tracks. But again, you could just cut some strips of paper. Now here I did cut 2 long strips of paper from some gray cardstock. This is a 65-pound weight cardstock. And I'm using my Black Soot Distress Oxide ink to add a little ink around the edges of these. So these measure about 1/4 inch wide and they need to be about 5.5 inches long. Mine are a little bit longer, but I'll cut those down. So I did that for both of those. Now let's go ahead and attach the snowy border to the inside of the card. Just want to line it up right over that little pop-up mechanism, and I'm just pressing that down. And I use my Nuvo Deluxe adhesive to attach this. And now we can add our little train tracks. So for this first one, I'm going to slide it underneath that pop-up mechanism. And I'm going to line it up with the score line on the card on the bottom section here. And you can see that that sticks through the back, so we can just cut that away because that won't show. So now I'm going to just figure out about how wide those tracks need to be. And then I'll go ahead and attach this piece here. I just marked that with a pencil just so I know where to position this. And I do want to make sure I line it up nice and straight, so I'm using my T ruler to do that. Now I can cut away that excess. So now that I have that done, I can add my little support pieces of the train track, I guess you would call them. I'm not sure. But these are the little wooden pieces on the track, so I'm going to go ahead. And now for these, I will need to cut these that are in front of the mechanism a little bit shorter. So I'm just marking that with a pencil, and I'll cut that excess away. And I'm just spacing these out maybe about a 1/2 inch apart. You could do these as close or as far apart as you want. So again, I'm just trimming those down just so they fit right in front here. And just 2 little dots of glue will hold those in place nicely. Then I'll add one more full one over on this side. And that gives us the illusion of a train track here running along the bottom of the card. And of course our train will be popped up right in front of that, so you can see that there. So now you want to add adhesive to the train, but only towards the bottom, only about 1/2 inch up. You don't want to have any glue up above that, because then your card will stick together when you go to open it. So I've added that glue, I'm just pressing it in place. And now the fun part, I can start adding all my little elves, my presents, my candy canes. And so I'll just take a little time here to add all these little pieces. And I've been thinking this train could be used for many other things. This would make a great little birthday card. If you put presents and some balloons coming out of this train, it would just be adorable. So don't think of this as just Christmas. This can be for anything. And if you're worried about that holly on the train, you could always cover that with something else. Maybe put a little flower there. You could put a little button there, something cute there. So don't worry about that. Just cover that up. Other than that, you can use it for anything you want. So I love when my stamp sets will do many other things. I like them when I can use them multiple times. And you can still use the train track idea, all the rest of the card. Just change out your colors and change out what you put in those windows there. So this is really fun to play with. Just adding all these cute little elements. Now, again, I did color the little elves and the candy canes off camera, but again, I just repeated the colors that we had used on the train. And I do have all of those colors listed below and on my blog. The only other colors I think I introduced were for their hair and their skin colors. So you'll see here, I added 3 little candy canes on the inside, but I did have some left over at the end, so I'll add a few more once we get the front done here. So I'm adding my little snowy borders here, and I'm lining those up right along the bottom of this panel. And then I've got my little sign here, which I think is so cute on this candy cane. It says North Pole and Santa's Workshop. So it's got little directions for the North Pole and the Santa's Workshop. And now here I'm going to just add my Santa and some more of those little candy canes. I just wanted the scene to look like it continued from the front onto the inside of the card. I'll add 2 little presents here. One I'm going to tuck in that snowbank. The other one I'll just put right on the front here. You could certainly pop up some things on the front of the card, but you do want to be careful with popping things up on the inside. You don't want it to get too bulky here. So here's where I had those 2 leftover candy canes, and I thought I would just continue that little row of candy canes on that snowbank. So now I can go ahead and attach these panels to the inside of the card, and I just wanted to show you that at this point, if you were going to add a sentiment, you probably want to do it while the card is not assembled. So if you wanted to stamp a sentiment there, you can go ahead and do that now. So I didn't want to add a sentiment, so I'm adding glue to this panel, and I want to make sure I don't add any of it to that mechanism there. I don't want any glue down in that mechanism. So I'm going to go ahead and attach this to the top section of the card. I like to do 1/2 at a time here. So I'm going to make sure I line that up with the score line and press that out. Now I can go ahead and attach the other side. And again, you can see that I'm just going around that mechanism. So you want to put plenty of glue, and you do want to use a strong adhesive here. So I'm going to press that out. And now we have the inside. Now let's go ahead and do the outside. So I'm just going to add some glue all around that top panel and center it on the front of my card. So let me give you a closer look at our finished card, our little Santa and that cute little sign. And then we've got this inside pop-up, which I just love. And again, I think can be used for just about anything. You could replace those little snowy borders with some grassy borders and do a fun little scene with some trees. And just have a great time with this. You could add some birds for a summer scene. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss a single video. As always, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Take care. Bye-bye.